Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast. This is episode number 57. We've made it to our 57th episode, creeping up to episode number 60 in a few weeks' time. The Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast is brought to you by the Hare Krishna Project, which is a national initiative that seeks to share Krishna consciousness with a new audience. We organize Hare Krishna festivals, kirtans around the country. We've just started our Bhagavad Gitas for Schools initiative. Some of you might have seen. We were out actually in the Bristol area just last week, and we distributed 40 Bhagavad Gitas to one school, which is fantastic. And so I've just got home from like a week's traveling, doing, Harinam Sankirtan, which is fantastic. So the Hare Krishna Project is busy across the UK, and we still do make sure we have the time to put these podcasts together, because a lot of devotees from around the UK say that you really appreciate these podcasts. You like to hear the stories of the kind of real people on the ground, the lay people, kind of a religious term, isn't it? The lay people of the Hare Krishna movement. So I'm really pleased to welcome our guest this week. Our guest is Prem. Hare Krishna, Prem.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Narada Dasi. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, I was about to say I'm relishing the rain. I mean, I like the rain, but it's gone on a bit too much. But apparently April showers is the catchphrase for kind of obviously this time of year. So Prem, it's great that you've agreed to be the guest on this week's podcast. Let's start by you telling us a bit about you and where you're from.
Okay, yeah. So a bit about me. Yeah, I am about 48. Well, my body is 48 years old.
I'm about 48.
It's a bit if who am I? That's the question. I am the soul, but yeah, I'm a soul traveling, and I appeared in Naples, Italy, in January 75. My family, very strict Catholic backgrounds from many generations. And as a child, I was always very interested anyway in God and spirituality. I went to a school that was more run by nuns. That wasn't the best experience, actually. To some extent, in fact, once I reached puberty and started meeting with friends, going to uni, and wanted to start exploring further out of my boundaries in Naples, I somewhat bought a one-way ticket to London, and that was November 98. I guess I just wanted to find my own independence, because the family was a little bit too protective, let's put it that way, and they wanted to choose for me, and I needed to prove that I could choose by myself and feel like I was leading my own life. I think maybe many people in Italy have that, or many people, I don't know, but yeah, it's quite a common story of that I needed to kind of break free. I want to break free. And so I came to London, and then many different jobs, and my spirituality at that point was fading a little bit away, and you just sucked in the Maya and the material energy in London, I guess, because you have to make a living. The language, of course, English wasn't my first language, and I had to kind of, go to courses. And I went to uni. I even somewhat managed to qualify as a lawyer in Italy at the same time, study law, and I'm not really sure what I really wanted to do. But say so, I also have a background of being a dancer, ballet, contemporary dance theater, which I started when very early. I was 9 when I started ballet, and that was my real first passion. I actually remember how I was stomping my feet down. I had to be enrolled in a ballet school, and finally my parents enrolled me 2 days through my tantrum, and I didn't want to eat anything because I want to go to ballet. So ballet has been a gift that God gave me, I guess, because in a way, dancing, that kind of, I always liked. I was quite successful winning bursary, and then I entered into a dance company. At the same time, I was studying, so I had this kind of two different let's say, identities at the time. But I really wanted to somewhat continue my dancing career, but then it was very harsh and difficult and competition. And then, of course, I started going out and meeting friends, or maybe wrong companies, but you need a very strict discipline. So somewhat I deviated. And then I started just 9 to 5 jobs in London. And then finally after divorce, and I have 2 kids, 18 years old, daughter 18, and my son is 17. They're really beautiful. Yeah, they're growing into beautiful adults. And I just decided after the divorce that I needed to go back to what I loved. So I somewhat started looking more into some alternative way of sustaining myself in London. So I qualified as a Pilates teacher in that was 2012, and then it took me another 6 years to understand that physical exercise wasn't really fulfilling me. While in the meantime, I was starting doing meditation and more different courses, exploring and researching who am I, and let's say yoga. I qualified in as a hatha yoga teacher in 2018, and from there we had the pandemic, and I think COVID has been very let's say essential for me in a way. Helped my going inward and helped me to find Krishna. I talk a lot.
Wow. No, I was listening and I was actually taking notes. I loved how sometimes when I ask people question, tell me a bit about you, they're a little bit shy and a bit unsure, but you just told me just like that. Did you say just now you're a lawyer, or you were trained as a lawyer?
Yes, in Italy. Over here, I'm the equivalent of a law graduate. I passed a University of Westminster, a postgraduate diploma in law, like a conversion law degree.
Wow, really impressive. And you haven't been kind of tempted or inspired to continue or pick up that law career again, or do that at all?
I had a very temporary contracts, but it was very difficult being Italian to be integrated in the law system. I found I'm not saying racism, but sorry, but it was a bit difficult. The Italian lawyers here, they wanted to me to work for free. Maybe okay, they would cover travel expenses, but eventually I just ended up taking other jobs like administrative roles and paralegal. I did for a while legal representative for asylum seekers. Yeah, that was interesting. So I've been exposed to different cultures and also women, like minority group who suffer domestic violence. And I volunteered in an organization called the Hare Center, and yeah, but that's also another story. But yes.
So you mentioned just now about COVID and the pandemic kind of enabled you and encouraged you to kind of go within, dig deeper spiritually. And you kind of, I think we're then maybe going to turn on kind of lead on to kind of spiritual stuff. So that leads us nicely onto my next question. How did you discover Krishna consciousness, and how did you meet the devotees, the Hare Krishna devotees?
Yes. So through the pandemic, so we are around 2020. I had a lot of time for myself. I didn't have to run to classes and teach here and there everywhere. So I started through the help of the internet, of course, to discover great personalities like Ramana Maharshi. I also went into some Zen. In the beginning, I was following a little bit Zen and Buddhist spiritual teachers like Adyashanti. I think it was one of the first, because a friend of mine said, why don't you apply through the pandemic, they helping people on low income, and you can go on this program is running, and people get on Zoom together, and he's giving his lectures. So I started showing and following Adyashanti. But the questions were leading me slowly to more, who am I? And he talks more about the real self, or the true nature of the self. And it would kind of push the soul into confinement. He would never talk about the soul. And so there was some lack there. There was talking about how we behave in society, and like the Buddhists today, for example. I've been exposed to people in Tao recently, and of course now I'm full Krishna conscious, but I'm not going nowhere else. But they like, what I can see is like they're more preoccupied of what's happening on a level of how we behave in society, which is very, very honorable, admirable, and of course, but there was a printout at the end of this meditation of things like, we don't do this, don't do that, like all written in under a negative kind of wording. And so I needed to find out more about the soul, really, like, so what's the desire of the soul? Who am I? And I'm not the body. I'm not this body that changes constantly. I was a child, and I was a girl, and I don't know, I was pregnant. Then I was, like I'm growing, and I can see all my gray hair, and then I see my mom aging. We all change, and the body changes, and then all this question, people of course dying apparently because of COVID. So death, and do we really die? Who are we? And am I all these thoughts that keep changing? Like tomorrow morning I change with a different thought in my head. So no, I'm not the mind. And so I kind of somewhat find that when I was a child, I loved God, even if it came through a different religion, or like Catholics. And I used to try to talk to the statue of the Virgin Mary, and looking for if there was any sign that she was responding or moving her eyes or something. But anyway, so I always had I need a pair. I know that there is more than the nirvana, or this. Through yoga and meditation, I myself can feel that my consciousness can actually, through different methods of meditation, and maybe silence or mantra or Om. The Om meditation has been very also important for finding Krishna, in my Krishna consciousness. I started meditating on Om, candlelight. I have a beautiful Buddha statue actually given to me by a friend in Bristol, and that's another interesting thing. I want to show you this Buddha, because anyway, his fingers opened along the palms. I don't know what happened, but it looks like, anyway, I think it's the vibration. So I put the mantra on these fingers of the Buddha, and but
Did you just to go back to, you were kind of looking at different things online during the pandemic and exploring different philosophies and different groups. Can you just go over again some of those groups? Because you mentioned Taoism, I think, didn't you?
Yeah, Tao. This is more recently. I have friends in that group that I actually sometimes it's quite can be challenging, because of course there is this being, we are not the body, we're not the mind. We all agree on that to some extent, but then the Tao, the Buddhists, they somehow they wouldn't necessarily talk about the soul. It's like they talk about spirit, or the big spirit, somewhat the mind is involved in it. And I'm listening to Srila Prabhupada. I'm helping Vanipedia translating in Italian some of the recording of Srila Prabhupada. And the more, even the short, those nectar drops, and I translate sometimes when I should do more of it, but I'm try. And Srila Prabhupada is so clearly helping us to understand that actually we are not the bodies. If we just observe all the changes we go through, and we are not the mind, and actually the mind is very dangerous, because you can see people get suicidal, depressed, and the anxiety that's killing people, and all these pseudo doctors. I also tried myself to go into counseling and therapy. I'm not saying that they're not doing a good job, but at the end of the day, nobody really talks about the soul. They worry about, okay, let's heal your inner child, the trauma you had where we all went through some sort of traumas, abandonment, rejection. It takes very little for a child to feel something wrong happened to him. For me, it was abandonment. Yeah.
I was just asking about kind of. I'm not sure whether it's pronounced Taoism or Taoism. I think there's two different.
Yeah, I've been told that by this friend of mine that it actually is two different ones. So there is Tao and Taoism, but don't ask me the difference.
I mean, I a couple of months ago, I read this book, Eastern Philosophy, by Kevin Burns, and it was just a chance for me to I don't know, brush up on some of my knowledge in terms of non-Hare Krishna philosophy. I think it's good to have an understanding of other traditions, and it's almost 20 years ago since did my degree in comparative religion. So I read this, I think, around Christmas time, just to brush up, and there was a whole section on kind of philosophies from China, Japan, Korea, and certainly Tao or Dao was one of them. And yeah, I mean, they personally never appealed to me personally, but I can understand that what they're proposing or recommending is beneficial for some people. And yes, I agree with your comments on Buddhism. I can see that Buddhism can be a little bit confusing. You know, when you rule out the existence of soul or spirit, or you just don't talk about it, it can be a bit, I don't know. The idea of nirvana personally doesn't appeal to me. To try and achieve nothingness, I just find a bit boring, really. But that's just a personal view. But it's good that you've kind of looked into those things and experienced them, and now, you know, later on in life, after exploring other philosophies, you've kind of come to Krishna consciousness. So what was it on? So after exploring those things, what was it online or on the internet or somewhere in the year that kind of brought you into Krishna consciousness, Bhakti yoga?
Okay, yeah, so it links back to the Om meditation. I found this group through the pandemic that was chanting Om every Thursday evening on Zoom. So I joined them, and they were part of they weren't really I think I ended up with some fake guru, by the way. I don't feel like maybe I should say the name here, but I end up being initiating some Atma Kriya Yoga with this group, and they were talking more about Vishnu, really. Like, unfortunately for me, apparently they would say that this leader was the incarnation of Vishnu, but finally, through a partner who was, you open your eyes, look at all these links, and there were lots of allegations and things. So I finally decided that was a fake guru, and I'm glad I did. And but in my heart, I had found Krishna, but unfortunately, this fake guru was proposing him to be Vishnu himself, which, but what happened is that I also had access to Amazon Prime, and I watched on Amazon Video this documentary on Srila Prabhupada that was amazing. One night, it's called Hare Krishna. The mantra, the man that made it, the Swami, you remember that?
Embarrassing. I've forgotten the full name of the film, but it was made by a Prabhupada disciple when it came out during the pandemic. The Hare Krishna movement, the mantra, the man, and the Swami, the movement. It's embarrassing that I've forgotten the name. I have seen it. It's a very good film.
Yeah. It's amazing, and I just was, oh my God, I was more and more curious about Srila Prabhupada, and during the pandemic, my daughter was also very a bit low because we couldn't have social life. Really, she couldn't see her friends. So eventually, I mentioned to her, I already had got myself a little bit more forward with Krishna. I bought some tapestry of Radha Krishna, and anyway, but I played the kirtan, the mantra on on YouTube, and Srila Prabhupada. At that point, I said to her, "Why don't we go to Bhaktivedanta Manor?" That was George Harrison mansion, and he gave it. Like, she's in music, she's a musician, my daughter, bass guitar, and so she said, "Okay, yeah, let's go. Like, get in the car, just take me there." So we went to Woodford, and I just remember this gate's amazing. For the first time, you enter into this garden with the gates open, and that was wow. Yeah, George Harrison, amazing gift that he gave to Srila, and for the progression in England, and the Krishna temple. And so we went. We couldn't really access every area, but we could go into the main temple hall. And so we saw on one side you have Radha Krishna deity, then you have Sita, Rama, Lakshmana, Hanuman, and on the opposite side, Srila Prabhupada deity that it looks very gold. And I just remember that there weren't many people. There was literally me and my daughter, maybe a couple more because it was the pandemic. And I just remember standing in between the deity of Krishna, Radha, and on the other side, Srila Prabhupada. And both me and my daughter turned to look at Srila Prabhupada, and we couldn't move. We were like, both of us magnetized, and that gold, I don't know, somehow we both stood there. And then I said to her, when we finally shook ourselves, and I said, did you also feel like, it's a feeling, but we're both a very highly sensitive being, me and my daughter, I think my son as well. But I said, did you feel like we were kind of petrified, like we couldn't move, like? And this is when later on I feel, because I'm progressing, and yes, I thank Perugit a lot as well, and I'll tell you in a moment how I met Perugit. But I feel like there's no way people can convert me into any other thing at this point, because I'm very strongly, I feel like Srila Prabhupada in that very moment initiated me and my daughter, but she still got to go through a little bit. But I felt the presence of the spiritual master. And from there, things evolved. And then not long after, I met Perugit in Camden Town. So that was again with my daughter again. My daughter has been quite present. Even as a child, she brought me one of the books that people gave in the street. And yeah, so Federica, yeah, she's probably been initiated by Srila. Somehow I feel that presence was real, and my curiosity started growing. My thirst for Krishna, who is Krishna, and learning more. And then when we bumped into Perugit, it was the 17th birthday. It was July. No, it was October. October 21. Yeah, because Bhaktivedanta Manor was July 2021. And then Perugit was in Camden Town. And so he was on the bridge with all the punks. And so the Perugit from the Bliss, he is doing an amazing, he's a brahmachari, and he's doing a great job for Krishna Consciousness everywhere, not just in London. And
just if any viewers and or listeners are wondering who Perugit is, we have featured Perugit on this podcast. He was guest, I think, number 50. This is 57, so 7 episodes ago. So Perugit is the founder of Bliss, which is the Bhaktivedanta Lives in Sound Society, which is a very active devotee mission or group, currently based in Bromley in South London. And those of you who have read my book, The Hare Krishnas in Britain, Bliss does get a very special mention. There's lots of special mentions. Bliss, I do have a particular mention in my book. So you met Bliss and other devotees. So you met Perugit from Bliss and other devotees from the mission too in Camden in 2021.
Yeah. October. Wow. Yeah. So I don't normally go out as much anymore like I used to. I don't like to travel across by underground. But my daughter that day was, no, we need to go to Camden, and it was her birthday. She wanted to buy some interesting shoes. Anyway, so I said, okay, let's go. Me being, like I have to pay material things, sorry, come through. But then we were on the bridge, and Perugit stopped us. I remember this really beautiful face. Yeah, so I have this kind of visual memory, I guess. And it was a lovely sunny day. So he with a book of Srila Prabhupada, he approached my daughter and he said, well, literally in her face, do you know Krishna? Like that, do you know Krishna? And she's like, she smiles, she giggles, and she pointed at me, and she said, "My mom." And then we start chatting a little bit. He gave me the book. I only gave him 50 cents, which I feel like for the book I should have given more, but I didn't have any change. And so, but actually, that wasn't the very first book I received in the street from the Hare Krishna movement, because I remember back in one of my very first jobs in London, I was working in Covent Garden, and I remember my lunch break. I was working for the Ministry of Defense in civil service, and I probably was 2002 or 2001, and I was looking down, going back to work, looking very miserable, passing the Covent Garden tube station, and I heard this voice saying, "Hey, you lost something." And I was like looking on the floor quickly, what did I lose? And then I lift my eyes to see who said those words. And here he is in all the saffron colors, the Hare Krishna monk, very young monk, brahmacharya, very, very nice, with a huge smile. And he said, "You lost your smile." And then he gave me the book, Chant and Be Happy, Srila Prabhupada, and with this question and answer with George Harrison. Yeah, that was my first one. Yes, yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that was 2021. You met the devotees from Bliss in Camden. I mean, the next question was going to be about yoga, but we can kind of come back to yoga later, because I'm really liking your story. It's really good to hear your story, and in terms of particularly, I've been quite intrigued by how during the pandemic you were just looking at different stuff online, and then you watched a movie and you discover Krishna Consciousness. So now you're in Southeast London. You're living in Southeast London.
Yes.
You met the devotees, what, a year and a half ago? Almost 2 years ago, you went to Bhaktivedanta Manor. And so how has your Krishna consciousness developed and evolved or grown in those 18 months?
Yeah, so I've been listening to the classes of Perugit quite regularly. Like every morning he goes live and he gives a class on the Srimad Bhagavatam with the purport of Srila Prabhupada. And then, so initially I've been following very like methodically. Evenings is the Bhagavad Gita lesson. And then I've been going to the Sunday Love Feast. And from time to time, I've also been meeting more devotees, because I felt like I miss the Sangha, sometimes to be with other devotees. So I have to come out of, because as a yogi, I also tend to be a bit of an hermit. Like I kind of I like my space. I also teach classes, and I see so many people during every day, and I sometimes I enjoy teaching. I enjoy what I'm doing, and I sometimes try to include some of the teaching through the class, but it's difficult when you teach in leisure centers. But anyway, when people are more focused on the body. But I try to also say, yeah, well, we are all, the body's degrading. I'm not like, I can't do the jumps I used to do in my 20s anymore, like neither. And so we're not the body. So I start conversation like this sometimes. And then with sometime I've been teaching yoga to the kids, and I was telling also Perugit, how can I maybe So yeah, so he also, was also saying, yeah, even through your yoga, you could preach, or try, or like introducing. So I tried to use my sort of, yeah, how can I introduce it into leisure center, but especially because it's easier in a community yoga space. But even there, just today I was talking to someone, and they all like very into their body still, like, okay, we have to experience, and you experience through the senses. And I'm like, but these very senses are imperfect, so what are we experiencing really? And then you believe what your eyes, the desire that can come through the eye. You want a woman, you want a man, you want a big house. So I was trying to say, actually, Srila says, yeah, the senses are also part of the Maya, like the material energy. So we can't really trust these senses, the body. And then, okay, the meditation, but we live in this society that is so chaotic and noisy. Even I was in India recently. I went,
Really?
yeah,
Where did you go in India?
yeah. So I really wanted to go to Vrindavan for a while now, and I've been putting the seed in my head for over a year. And then finally, I met this Russian woman, a friend. She's younger than me, actually, beautiful, and she came to my classes once, and there was very soon some form of alignment. We like yeah, the yoga classes I teach are also quite spiritual, where we chant as well a little. I've been chanting the Ma mantra at the end with or Om, or anyway, she liked, and she wanted to follow me around, and then we became friends, and I told her that I want to go to India and Vrindavan and Krishna. At the time, actually, she did come to Perugit once, but it wasn't the right time for her because of the war in Ukraine and Russia. Yeah. But we see how Krishna is powerful, because she had to leave. She couldn't really dance with us. So she told me, sorry, I need to go. Like, there was Russia and Ukraine starting the war, and so she's got yeah, like lots of friends and relatives also in Ukraine. So it's very heartbreaking for them, because so she came to India. She really said, you want to go to Vrindavan? Let's go. So we booked the flight, and with a travel agency that then went bankrupt, and we lost the ticket, but luckily enough we got the refund. And she said, we're still gonna go, so we have to still book it. So how Krishna works, like, she left, and Purujit love feast, but then later on, she actually, if it wasn't for her, maybe I wouldn't have gone to Vrindavan on my own. And I would struggle to find someone to go with, but she's been amazing. And Krishna has been using her to take me there. And we've been to Vrindavan just now, like last February. It was incredible.
How long were you in India for?
It was only 2 weeks.
Okay.
But very intense. We lived very intensely. So we flew to Delhi we arrived on Valentine's Day on the 14th of February. And then from Delhi, we took the train to Mathura. And while we were on the train, we also met interesting devotees, personalities that really, I'm still in contact with a couple of them, that gave us a lot of insight and where Krishna was and what Mathura, where to go. Also, this in particular, this personality, Deep Kumal, like his name, to me, it looked like Hanuman, this guy. Anyway, but he jumped into the compartment when we were sitting, and he started telling lots of stories of Krishna. And then he said, make sure before you go to Vrindavan to stop in Mathura and go to the Krishna Janmashtami temple. So we did, with our little luggages, and we got there. There was high security and lots of monkeys, and but beautiful, and then inside amazing temple with all the incarnations. There's also a Buddha painting. Amongst the incarnation, there's also Buddha.
Yeah, well, Buddha in Vaishnav theology is recognized as an avatar of Vishnu. so Buddha fits in with the kind of Vaishnav or Hindu pantheon of deities. Yeah, I mean, and of course you've mentioned, we were chatting just earlier before we started broadcasting, that Bliss have produced a book, I think, The Teachings of Lord
Yeah,
Buddha,
I have it
which
here.
is
Shall I
actually
show it?
yeah, please show it, yeah, The Teachings of Lord Buddha from the Vedic point of view. So it's a fantastic book, and it's actually promoting and sharing Krishna consciousness, yes, based on the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, you can contact Bliss. If you just go to Expand the Bliss London on Facebook or their website, you contact them, you should be able to purchase a copy. It's when I was at the Bliss Temple a while ago, they did show me the book. I have to admit, I haven't got a copy yet, but it looks fantastic. Okay, so you were in India for 2 weeks. I love the Krishna Janmashtami temple, by the way, in Mathura. I've been there a few times. On my very first trip to India 10 years ago, I went to that temple. And yes, there's a lot of security,
Yes.
but I loved being there. And I loved just the experience, the kind of Radha Krishna deities in the temple. And of course, anyone who's a bit unsure or not completely aware, it's believed that Krishna appeared or was born in Mathura, and just in a particular space or area. And then just around the corner, there's another little temple. I don't know if you saw it, and they claim to be the location of the correct birthplace or appearance place of Krishna. So it's I've been to that one too, and they're both lovely. But I love Krishna Janmashtami. Yeah, it's a fantastic place. So okay, so and you're off to the United States soon, I think you've
In a week,
mentioned.
yes.
In a
Yeah,
week. So tell me if you want to tell us a bit about what you're doing there and what's inspiring you to go.
Yes. So, so as I said, I'm not feeling like, saying I'm with this group, I'm with that group. Like I'm exploring my own Krishna consciousness, and I trust the Srila Prabhupada as a spiritual master. Although officially I've not been initiated, in my heart I felt like that kind of Bhaktivedanta Mana experience that day in July 2021 was some form of initiation. But of course, I need a spiritual master. But I do feel like Srila Prabhupada, even if it's not physically present, is present in his words, in the Vani, and one of his disciples is Shamarani Dasi, and she's in Miami. And they also say the artist, because you might remember that she's has done beautiful paintings for all the Srila Prabhupada's books, the Bhagavad Gita. She's an incredible painter. And I've been sort of curious about her. And for a while, then I came across other Krishna devotees who know her, and I somehow got her number. And I left a message in a text less than a year ago, actually, trying to think. Probably was only September. And so how Krishna moves again. And then she invited me to go. So yeah, so I'm going to the ashram in a week, and I follow them as well as Perugit. I don't feel like I want to stop anything that's coming to me, because I think it's Krishna's plan. And last Saturday I was in Soho at the Radha Krishna temple for the Aarti with some friends, and I also had prasad, and I met with another devotee there at the entrance, Ramadas, but I can't remember. He said he was from California. And my friend mentioned about my visit to Shyamarani Dasi next week, and he said amazing things about her, and doesn't matter if it's not ISKCON, doesn't have to be ISKCON. At the end of the day, Perugit as well is not necessarily part of the, but we feel like this Kali Yuga of this period we're living with a lot of quarreling, and it's also affecting somehow these institutions. And then we we just have to, like Krishna devotees, we just have to be aware of how Kali Yuga is moving, and that was also all this, yeah, like go a little bit beyond that kind of. I mean, I know there's been many terrible cases in ISKCON, but as well as in so many other religious things that we hear sometimes. But and we shouldn't follow those that they pretend to be spiritual master and they're not. Of course not.
The problem, the danger, danger is a strong word, the danger that devotees can face is we start to become quite society conscious or institution conscious rather than Krishna conscious, and we have to try and always strive for Krishna consciousness, and you know, be not so attached to the institutions and the organizations of this world. So I agree with you kind of 100%. And if anyone listening or watching is wondering who Prem's referring to, most of you will know who Prem's referring to, but Shamarani, also known as Jadharani, is one of the most, I don't know, famous is a strong word. She probably wouldn't use that word to describe herself because she's very humble. One of the most famous kind of personalities in the worldwide Hare Krishna movement. If you look at the history of the Hare Krishna movement over the last 60, 70 years, her claim to fame, that's another interesting, awkward term. In my head, as kind of a historian, as a writer, one of her little claims to fame, therefore, is she's believed to be now the oldest or longest serving female member of the Hare Krishna movement in the world.
Wow.
So she met Prabhupada in 1966. I mean, I haven't read her biography, but she is the oldest serving female member of the Hare Krishna in the world. I think she was 16 at the time.
Or 19, maybe.
She's obviously a bit older than that now. I don't know how old Shamarani is, which is
she looks incredible.
Her age is irrelevant, but yeah, and she, you know, she's certainly up there in terms of spiritual leaders in the Hare Krishna movement. I was just actually looking at my phone, not because I was being rude, but we had a disciple of Shamarani as as a guest, episode 36. So we're now recording episode 57. Episode 36 was Apurva. Apurva is a disciple of Shamarani Didi. And Apurva, I think, still lives in Brighton, and she was a guest about a year ago. So I was just looking through the number, because in my head I do numbers chronologically and systematically. So yeah, I haven't had the privilege to meet Shamarani yet, but absolutely, you going to see her and maybe seek guidance, inspiration, shelter. It's definitely a good thing.
I'm excited. I mentioned about this interview to her today in a voice message because, of course, we are communicating. Also, looking forward to meet her in person. And I told her about you and this interview, and wow.
She didn't warn you against me, did she? She didn't know.
We are going across.
Don't go near that guy. That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, hopefully next time Shamarani manages to come to the UK, I have to make it a priority to kind of to go and see her. Okay, so we were going to talk a bit about yoga, but we kind of got positively sidetracked to talk about Krishna consciousness. It's kind of you've been interested in yoga for a long time, in kind of the general practice of yoga, in terms of how people in the everyday life understand yoga. You've been interested in yoga for a long time, right? Like,
yeah, but of course, yoga comes from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6.
Absolutely. And one of my questions was going to be about being a yoga teacher and tell us a bit about your practice. But I mean, we all know that yoga comes from the Bhagavad Gita. I've got a friend who lives near me. She's a devout atheist, doesn't do God at all, but she's a yoga teacher. I have no idea what type of yoga. I've never asked her,
exactly.
but
And you
she,
have so many of these
yeah, but she
cases.
sits on the floor and she stretches and stuff. And she said, "Oh, you know, when I qualified as a yoga teacher, I went to India for 6 weeks and I read the Bhagavad Gita." I was like, "Wow, you never told me you read the Bhagavad Gita." Of course, it might be a different translation. It might not be
Yeah,
Bhagavad Gita as it is,
many.
but I'm just amazed that she even did that. So yeah, so yoga. Yeah, I mean, obviously, even within the Hare Krishna movement, there's different views on yoga in terms of its material world practice, if that makes sense, and how we can use yoga, because people out in the real world are interested in yoga, but sometimes yoga can be spiritually empty, or it's empty of spirituality. It's just that
Yeah,
physical exercise stuff.
exactly.
But you're interested in yoga in that kind of led you onto a higher level, didn't it?
Yeah, well, exactly, because apparently the word was yog, and it's the verb that means to link up to the highest consciousness and Krishna. So it's like a process that through the pranayama, the breathing, the asanas. But before arriving to the actual asanas, which are the physical exercises, there is a process of niyama, like all rules and regulations, and then the ahimsa, non-violence is within those. Um, and then from there you go to the pratyahara, which is the going inward and control of the senses. So apparently not even music should be played, because you want to go inward really, and somewhat come out of the pull of the senses. So pratyahara, and then from there you go into the asana finally. So there is a preparation first. And so when I was in India recently, I went to a 1 week yoga retreat in an ashram at the top of towards Rishikesh, but further up, right under the Himalayas. It's called Fulchati ashram on the Ganga River. And it was an ashram where every day we would follow like very like there is the day is like let's say sadhana, right, of the yogi. The sadhana is a process, a discipline. In the morning you wake up at 5:30 to do the cleansing, and then we were doing some chanting to the Ganga River. Our guru there, she is a yoga teacher, Asa yoga teacher. Her name is Lalita Ji. And of course, that's why I wanted to go to Vrindavan first, because Rishikesh and Himalaya, even Purji told me, be mindful, because that's the Mayavadi and Shivaist, and it's a lot of Shiva worship on the Himalaya. Himalaya is Parvati is the wife of Shiva and Mount Kailash, and all respect to Lord Shiva, and he's a highest devotee. But what was Shiva doing? He was meditating, and in his heart he had Vishnu, Krishna himself. So he's the meditation process is, again, even Shiva as a first yogi is the Adi yogi, Lord Shiva. As a first yogi, he is also reminding us that we have to meditate on the form of Vishnu, the four-armed form of Vishnu in the heart, and that's Krishna himself. So it's not like just meditating on my body sensations, or like other yoga teachers just like in the Western anyway, there's this too cautious to not to offend other culture or religion, diversity. But by doing that, we all falling into the Maya, really. Like we're just focusing on that physical, and we forgot the real meaning of yoga. Yeah.
Well, I'm pleased that you're now exploring the real meaning of yoga,
Yeah.
which is this kind of transcendental, eternal, spiritual link between the self, the personal self, and the super self, or the super soul, Krishna. So you mentioned just now about the kind of the meaning of the word yoga. So the yoga in Sanskrit literally means to connect or to link between the soul or individual selves with the supreme soul or person, Krishna. and a bit of a kind of a word game. Religion, the word religion in Latin actually means to bind, and it means to bind the soul with God. So it literally, the word religion and yoga, the two words actually mean the same thing, but in different languages. And obviously in today's world, they have very, very different connotations. When we think of religion, we might think of something quite institutional or organized, and yoga is seen as a bit kind of less institutional and less organized, more of a spiritual thing. And that's a shame, actually, because Srila Prabhupada said that real religion means to love God. That is the essence of real religion,
Yeah.
real religiosity.
And also, I had a discussion today with another yogi after our practice of Ashtanga yoga this morning in this beautiful studio in Lee, the yoga house. It's a beautiful space, actually. They only offer yoga, Pilates, Gong, meditation, and all, let's say, holistic practices. And I had a chat with this person at the end, and he was saying, because I mentioned about Krishna and being at the Sankirtan and last Saturday, and he said, okay, I can see you're very enthusiastic about Krishna, but he was saying, don't forget that you are yourself God. And I'm like, hold on a minute, that's the usual thing I hear all the time. Even like the Buddhists, they don't want to surrender to God. Why? Because maybe they meditate and they feel this connection, but then the yogi tend to merge with the highest consciousness in meditation, and they think they are God, and that's it, and they finish. They don't want to go any further than that because they feel this connection. But actually, the Bhakti yoga, the yoga of the devotional service, is actually surrendering to God, to the highest, to Krishna. And that takes that takes the humbleness and just remembering that we are only parts and parcels. But me and this friend, we were agreeing, yes, we are parts and parcels of God. But he said, and therefore I'm God. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not really, because God is a person as well. He's everywhere. Like they go, oh, he's everywhere. Like I speak to my friends from the Buddhists, God is everywhere. Why do you have to have this person like in a different form and shape that you have to surrender to, when actually God is in your heart, in my heart, is everywhere? So they say to that level of the, let's say, the Paramatma, no, the localized in the heart, or
I mean, and I imagine in a lot of yoga groups there's a focus on Brahman, which is the kind of the impersonal effulgence of Krishna, or effulgence of Krishna, and and there's a focus on trying to achieve kind of spiritual void, but there is a lack of awareness or desire to recognize that God or Krishna is a person. It's
unfortunate, very unfortunate.
Okay. Believe it or not, we've been chatting for almost an hour already on this podcast. It's been great. You and I can chat after, when we kind of say goodbye to everybody watching and listening at home. But Prem, it's been fantastic to have you as the guest on this week's podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Episode number 57. My goodness. We're fast creeping up to 60. I do have I hope a special guest lined up for number 60. Just kind of waiting to confirm that. But Prem, you've been a fantastic guest this week, and thank you for being so willing to come on and share your story. And there'll be lots of people like you, a lot of people, a lot of devotees in the kind of Hare Krishna community who are kind of asking the same questions as you in terms of where do I fit in, or which mat or sangha can I explore next. And it's really good to have an open mind. And I think it's important to always have an open mind, to continue to have an open mind, and to not become too stuck or stubborn, or fixed in one place. So I really hope, Prem, that your trip to, is it Miami you're going?
Miami, yeah,
Miami,
on the
Florida.
18th for this month.
That's like next week.
Yeah, in 1 week, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
To see Shamarani. Wow. I'm
Eagle.
Yeah, what a place. What a place. Miami, Florida. Okay, well, you and I have a brief chat after, but I'll just say goodbye to the viewers and the listeners at home. So thank you to everyone for tuning into this week's edition of the Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast. If you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, you can like it. If you're watching it on Facebook, you can care for it and love it too. On Facebook, please do put us a positive comment, and please do share the link with friends and family and other people in the devotee community. If you do want to be a guest on a future edition of the Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast, please do get in touch, and we will certainly sort out a time and a date that suits us all. Until next week, see you all soon, and Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.